Did the country of Sweden try to clean up the crime scene at the bombing of the Nordstream pipeline? Independent journalist Jeffrey Brodsky, the only journalist to go to all 4 of the blast sites and actually remove sediment for lab analysis, has been following this story. He just published a bombshell story just a short time ago, earlier this afternoon, and is here with those lab results. Jeffrey, welcome back to the show. This is really a follow-up to a story we brought to our audience a few weeks ago. You were first on the show to explain to our audience how you went to multiple crash sites, removed sediment, sent them in for lab analysis, and now today you have those results. Can you tell our audience what you found or what they found?
Sure. Thanks for having me back, Clayton. I'm pleased that I can finally share with your audience the results of the tests that we had, the explosive analysis test that we had. These are some remaining samples, some extra samples that we have. As you said, they were collected from one of the blast sites of the Nordstream sabotage. We took these sediment samples to a lab in Germany, and we had them analyzed for explosive traces. There was a whole host of chemical substances that we asked to be detected, if there was any detection. One of them was HMX. This was, of course, the explosive traces, or allegedly the explosive traces that were found aboard Andromeda, which was a small yacht or pleasure yacht, a small boat that was allegedly used to by a six-person team of pro-Ukrainians to attack the Nord Stream pipelines. We also had these sediments tested for TNT, PETN, RDX, and a whole host of chemical substances that are often found in explosives. Unfortunately, the analysis did not detect any explosive traces.
None. So no explosive traces were found by this lab?
No.
Now, it was 8 months after the explosion that you were there getting this sediment. And as we talked offline, I guess the idea is that perhaps in 8 months, these pieces of residue of these explosives could have dissipated somehow. But in your expert analysis, speaking with different experts that you've been speaking to over the past number of months, does that seem likely that this would have all disappeared?
It's unknown. It doesn't seem likely, and it doesn't seem unlikely. It could have disappeared. But we do know that Sweden has been to the blast sites on at least 2 occasions. Your audience probably knows that the Nord Stream sabotage took place on September 26, 2022. Shortly after, Sweden sent a team of investigators to the blast sites, and they have admitted publicly that they removed material, sediments, debris, parts of the ruptured pipeline from the blast site. Then someone named Trond Larsen, he's a drone operator. He was commissioned by Expression, a Sweden newspaper, to go to one of the blast sites to capture underwater drone images and footage of one of the blast sites. When he went, after the Swedish investigators went, he still found a decent amount of large parts of the pipeline that had been ruptured, debris, sediment. It didn't look like the area had been. It looked like it may have been cleaned, but not totally cleaned, let's say. Then Sweden cordoned off the area again, closed the area again, and they sent in their investigators again. And we know that this second time they removed even more debris materials, because Trond Larsen, the same drone operator who I interviewed for my article, he was commissioned once again by the BBC to go to the same blast site. And the second time that he went, he told me that the blast site looked drastically different. It looked like it had been cleaned. There had been far fewer pieces of the ruptured pipeline, less debris. So we know the Swedish investigators have cleaned up the crime scene on at least 2 occasions, and they've said so publicly. This is, I think, reported in the New York Times and maybe in Reuters also.
So it's entirely possible that when they go down there with the dredging machines or giant, I've seen these things under the ocean where they use these giant tubes that basically sucking up not only sediment, but also particles, pieces, rocks, and pieces of the pipeline. So metallic pieces, et cetera, they would be sucking up a lot of this debris and sediment. Entirely possible. So then your sediment analysis goes to the lab, but it had quite an odyssey, didn't it? Because I think this is a very important part of the story, which is the pushback that you received from a number of labs. You took your sediments to multiple for-profit labs around Europe to have them analyze sediments that they would normally do. Like, these are sediment analysis that they would normally do at these labs, for-profit labs. And what were you being told at a number of different labs?
Yes. So I contacted about a dozen labs, and before we finally found one in Germany. Some of these labs I contacted, for example, said that they couldn't do the type of analysis that was required in order to detect these explosive traces, because they didn't offer that type of analysis. And I know this to be untrue because it was advertised on their website. One lab, for example, told me that they could that I'd been emailing with a lab, for example, one in Denmark, and it seemed like that they were going to do this analysis that I requested, and I've been emailing with them. And I was actually about to hop on a plane. I live here in Spain, in Barcelona, and I was going to go from Barcelona to Copenhagen to deliver these sediment samples. And then suddenly I received an email from them saying that we can't service you, with no explanation. Another lab here in Spain, I contacted them and they told me, actually, not only can we not service you, but you need to call the Spanish police immediately, and you need to turn over your sediment samples. And this didn't seem right, because I talked to the managing director of an explosive engineering company, and he actually recommended this lab in Spain and said, Jeffrey, that they do the type of analysis you need. I've worked with them before. And he's worked throughout Europe and the United Kingdom. And according to his knowledge and his experience and background, both in the European Union and the United Kingdom, individuals can have small traces, small sediment samples that may or may not contain explosive traces in their home, store them in their home and transport them, especially if it's for scientific purposes. But I was told that it was illegal, and that doesn't seem to be the case. So I was receiving a lot of pushback, and labs were very reluctant to help me or service me and my colleague. And we finally found one in Germany. And when we did, we delivered the samples on June 16th. We were told it would take approximately 5 to 10 business days to get the results back. I talked to the lab the week afterwards and had to give them some further information. And I also wanted to talk to them to just make sure that they didn't need any further information on my part from me in order to carry out the analysis. I was told that everything was fine. I contacted them at the end of June, well over 5 to 10 business days after we'd originally turned in the sediment samples. And they told me, Jeffrey, we don't have any record of you as a customer. And not only that, we can't locate your samples. So I exchanged, 5 or 6 very vague, and they sent me very vague and frustrating emails to me. And finally, they did locate my sediment samples, and they told me that it was an accident, and they were left in the refrigerator in their office. So then finally, I had to provide the same information I'd already provided, and then finally around July 21st, 20th, something like that, they finally did give me back the results. But it didn't seem like they were very interested in servicing me, although I was a paying customer and it's a for-profit lab, like all the other ones were for-profit.
Unbelievable. So they finally delivered to you these results with an absence of explosives attached to it. Entirely possible, of course, that there was nothing there. Do you think that something nefarious is going on? They intentionally didn't want to find explosive results in these tests? They had, after all, how do you know, right? I guess we're trying to prove a negative in a way, but how do you know if they don't come back to you with any sort of response? It could have been 50-50, right?
We don't know, and it could have been 50-50. The circumstances may, if not nefarious, maybe they were insidious, but in a minimum, I think the circumstances were nebulous. This was the case with many labs. My colleague told one lab that we found the explosive traces in the Baltic Sea. And immediately the lab said, sorry, can't service you. He told another lab that we found the explosive traces in Ukraine. And that lab representative's pants seemed to catch on fire because he couldn't get off the phone soon enough. Couldn't enter the conversation soon enough. But we did finally find this lab in Germany. And something that was at least, somewhat strange to me is My understanding is that they give all of their customers their general terms and conditions. They sent me a PDF file, kind of like a non-disclosure agreement. And in this non-disclosure agreement, it's very clear that customers cannot share or publish the lab results unless they get written permission. I, of course, contacted the lab and asked for this written permission. And I was told that they needed to talk to the legal department. But I was also told that same day by a customer service representative that, there had been precedent for people publishing their lab results in press releases, in journals, in newspapers and magazines. So I was feeling pretty optimistic that, they were going to let me publish these results. And this was before we knew what the results were, I should mention also. But they did not let me do that. So what I've written about today, published an article in a Spanish newspaper and also on my Substack, as you said, I've written about as much as I possibly legally can and could.
Well, unbelievable story, and thank you for trying to get to the bottom of it. We'll see if any other evidence emerges as to the cleanup process of this crime scene at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, but it seems like there's some really strong powers that are going to great lengths to keep this a secret. Jeffrey Brodsky, thank you so much for your reporting on this. We'll have a link to your posting of this and your reporting of this on your Substack in the description below. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, and thank you for the work on this.
Clayton, thanks for having me again.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.